he did put 235 judges, progressive judges, judges not under the control of Trump last year on the bench, and they are ruling against Trump time after time after time.
Yes, the Lizard King, Chuck Schumer. He loves Latin American street gangs being loose in the United States, too, doesn't he? He's not on our side, right? Just one reason that he is the Lizard King. And a very good Easter Monday to you, and welcome back once again. Michael Piercy opening with Chuck Schumer. Hey, we got judges. We got judges. We have big stories today. Of course, Pope Francis died in Rome at the Vatican. He had been ill, very ill, on and off, pneumonia, in and out of the hospital. He was in the hospital recently for weeks, and he recovered somewhat. In fact, the front page of the Washington Times, your newspaper of record in Washington, D.C., has the Pope, their full-color photograph above the fold. Page 1 of the Washington Times today is the Pope from yesterday at the Vatican. And the caption with the Pope, who was out on the Vatican Easter Sunday and in the Pope Mobile, taking a lap with a security detail, of course, ever since Ali Agha, at least, around St. Peter's Square in front of St. Peter's Basilica in Rome, Italy. I was looking at it this morning, watching the television with my best girl, and we have been to Rome many times and to the Vatican many times, and looking at the dome, St. Peter's, and at the top of the dome, there is a structure, and it's called the cupola. The cupola is on top of the dome, and as would be on top of the dome or the top of other churches and cathedrals and other structures as well architecturally. But the cupola on top of the Vatican, on top of St. Peter's Basilica at Vatican City, you can actually make your way up there. And my best girl and I, we went up to the cupola on top of the dome at St. Peter's Basilica, the Vatican, Rome. And it's fascinating to get there. There is a very narrow staircase inside the walls of the dome. And when you're inside the walls of the dome, they're curved, arched. And you have to kind of lean as you're making your way up this very narrow staircase inside of the walls of the dome, the interior and the exterior of the dome. A very narrow staircase that goes round and round inside the dome to get up to the cupola, not Francis Ford Coppola, but the cupola, which is atop the St. Peter's Basilica. And it gives you and then you can walk a circle around the exterior of the cupola out there, and gives you one of the best views of Rome you're going to get anywhere, I can assure you of that. But enough about me. My best girl and I looking at the video this morning from St. Peter's, and everybody loves Rome. Who doesn't love Rome? And the Vatican, of course, the center and the heart of Rome. And St. Peter's Basilica. If you've never been inside of St. Peter's, I would recommend it highly while you're still walking the planet Earth, because it is one of the most extraordinary, breathtaking, the indoor view is one of the most breathtaking views. The scale and the scope of St. Peter's is beyond anything I've ever seen any place, and it's only St. Peter's that has that. But the Pope was there yesterday. He was out because it was Easter Sunday, and even though he was unwell, and interestingly enough also, who met with the Pope, but the Vice President of the United States, J.D. Vance, who actually converted not too long ago to Catholicism and was at the Vatican representing the United States of America. I believe that he has moved on to India now, the Vice President, where he is talking about trade and tariffs and trade agreements with India, one of the most populous countries on planet Earth, communist China and not as communist India, the two most populous countries in the world. But the Pope, again, the Vice President was there meeting with the Pope, Pretty amazing timing. And then hours later, on MSNBC, they'll probably start accusing him, J.D. Vance, of being responsible for the Pope's death, because that's the kind of stuff that they do. They're mental, very, very mental. In fact, Joe Scarborough today on MSDNC, what happened to that woman that fell and died in his office in Florida, that young woman? We still haven't gotten a good answer to that. But amazing stuff going on in the world today. We also had a big event over the weekend because the United States Supreme Court ruled against President Trump deporting Venezuelan gang members from the United States of America. And it was fascinating because Justice Samuel Alito and Justice Clarence Thomas both dissented from the majority of the U.S. Supreme Court. Remarkable moment, I've got to say. It was very unusual, and it was drawn to my attention yesterday morning by someone close to the situation. But I want to get into that today, too, because that is pretty wacky. But back to the Pope Francis, the death of Pope Francis, and now a new pope will be elected by the College of Cardinals at the Vatican. It will be some time before the discussion, the debate, and the votes come from the College of Cardinals at the Vatican. But a lot is going to happen between now and then because the Pope died and his body will lay in repose inside of St. Peter's Basilica. The public will be allowed to come visit. That will be a big deal. The Pope will be buried, presumably interred, beneath St. Peter's Basilica, where they have the bones of St. Peter, of Jesus and the apostles, and St. Peter himself. The bones are beneath the dome, beneath the floor, beneath the nave of the basilica at St. Peter's, and so he will be presumably, I believe, laid to rest there. And then the College of Cardinals will get to work in the Sistine Chapel, selecting a new pope who will be elected, but not by any cardinals, by the cardinals from all over the world, who will all be invited to Rome to participate in the selection of a new pope. It's a fascinating tradition. It's a wonderful tradition. It's Western civilization at its best. It's wonderful stuff. And they write their votes on ballots. The ballots are handed in by the College of Cardinals. No cardinal over the age of 80 is allowed to participate in the vote, and that's because of Joe Biden. Now, that's not because of Joe Biden. I only made that up. But for a long time now, the Vatican, the College of Cardinals, decided that none of the cardinals over the age of 80 would be allowed to vote. Their vote would not count in the selection of a new pope, which is kind of an interesting thing. And, honestly, looking at Joe Biden, well, I'll just move on from there. But remarkable stuff. And then, of course, there was MSDNC and Joe Scarborough, because the Pope, again, delivered an Easter message yesterday, and he was busy denouncing. The Washington Times has this on their front page. Pope Francis delivered an Easter message denouncing what he called the logic of fear. The logic of fear he was denouncing at St. Peter's Square after meeting Sunday with Vice President J.D. Vance at his Vatican residence. The frail pontiff barely spoke during the encounter. And that is the caption on the front page, color photo of the Pope above the fold today in the Washington Times. The Washington Post, no, they don't have that. They have LGBTQ on the front page above the fold. The Supreme Court will hear a case about indoctrinating children to be transgender and gay starting in kindergarten, which the Democrats want. They also have surge strains ice bed space, immigration customs enforcement. Some migrants sleep on floors. Yeah, well, okay, and that's the front page. Then they do have a couple of pictures. They have Vance meets Pope in private Vatican visit. That's below the fold on the front page, but never mind that. And they have, in Easter celebration around the globe, East meets West, they say that Eastern Orthodox and Western churches, Easter fell on the same Sunday this year, which was somewhat interesting, but not exactly a Christian paper, the Washington Post. Godless commies, pig dogs, and they harvest the organs of millions of unborn babies. They're not on the side of civilization. But that's not important now. Now, let's go. Well, it is important, of course, but with that said, let me go because the passing of Pope Francis got their attention, even at MSDNC, where godless commies reside, because they're not on our side at all. They really aren't. So, what is it? Begins at number 4. Number 4, Joe Scarborough on Morning Joke with his semi-inflatable flotation device of a third wife, Mika, who just sit there and look dumb, honey. Pat her on the back of the hand. Just look dumb. That's your job. Just sit there with your mouth hanging open because it's your natural state. And here's Joe Scarborough on the Pope. They came in and they said, hey, Pope Francis died at the Vatican early this morning. And it was last night, perhaps, our time, although possibly after midnight, our time as well. But this morning we learned that Pope Francis had died. Joe Scarborough went to TV and immediately did what the filthies always do, what the filthy left-wing radicals, the party of firing on Fort Sumter, the party of slavery and Jim Crow, the Democrat party of shooting everybody and firebombing Jews' houses, if you happen to be the governor of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Here's Joe Scarborough. Hey, the Pope is dead. How should I respond? Oh, you should respond like this, Joe.
Many on the hard right inside the church were shocked that this Pope would actually borrow from Jesus Christ and living that simple life. Borrow from Jesus Christ. And they were radical words when he said it. And it was like, it was sounded like the shot of a cannon. It just stunned everybody when the Pope said, who am I to judge?
Nobody was shocked by anything. He's a lying Sacagawea. You shouldn't lie when the Pope dies. It's pretty amazing stuff. Who am I to judge? He was responding to a question purportedly by a gay priest, who is still supposed to be celibate, by the way, and a comment that set the tone for a papacy more welcoming to LGBTQ Catholics in 2013. That's what Joe Scarborough is referring to. Pretty amazing stuff. The news media is going to polarize along political lines the death of the Pope, because inside the Catholic Church, he said, who am I to judge? Well, you're the Pope. You're the head of the Catholic Church, which has, as a matter of doctrine, as a matter of dogma for centuries, for millennia, maintained the beliefs of the Church. And he describes it as the hard right, because he used the words of Jesus, he says, who am I to judge? But he's talking about something that was perhaps an affront to Catholic dogma and doctrine, but never mind that. And you Democrats, I got to tell you, they're telling you. I've got more of Joe Scarborough because he wasn't done yet. Because, hey, wait a minute. Maybe Trump has something to do with the Pope dying, because Democrats have a mental illness. Well, let me scratch that. That's wrong. They have many mental illnesses. They're suffering from myriad mental illnesses. And I will update you as these illnesses are represented by Mo Yarborough early this morning. You know that this country was built on hard work and built on grit. Whether you spend your days standing for long hours, running errands, chasing the kids, maybe just doing your part to keep the world turning on its axis, you shouldn't have to deal with fatigue every day and foot pain and ankle pain, and that is where G-Defy shoes come in. G-Defy shoes are built with patented VersaShock technology. The Federal Trade Commission has authorized G-Defy shoes to tell you that these shoes help to relieve minor occasional pain associated with walking, running, standing for prolonged periods of time. G-Defy shoes help to absorb harmful shock and align your body, improve your biomechanics, and return energy with every step you take. My best girl and I, we've got G-Defy shoes. We hike around the city that make your arches feel better after you're done hiking. Get 50% off your order of $120 or more right now by texting Chris to 91888. Or you can head to Al Gore's Amazing Internet and go to gdefy.com. Use the code CHRIS, C-H-R-I-S, traditional, amazing stuff. The G-Defy shoes, they've got a 60-day risk-free trial, so you've got nothing to lose. Message and data rates apply. Yes, sir. Yeah, I've got more, the media, the Democrats, the Pope, and their favorite gangs, and the Supreme Court with an unusual moment over the weekend. Chris here with a list of things that none of us should trust. The Washington Post, the New York Times, anything on CNN. Here's a list of things that I do trust. The Washington Times. Support real journalism for just $1 a week at washingtontimes.com/Chris. Also, the long knives are out for Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of Defense, with a new fake story, another fake news story about this app that they use. And in Moscow, and they really love. I didn't even tell you about the bumper sticker that I saw. I took a picture of it too. It says Putin Vance 2028. Their sexual obsession with Vladimir Putin is another mental illness that these people have. But before I get back to all of the many mental illnesses of every single Democrat in America, apparently, CNN has the story and KTVZ has the story. Department of Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem fell victim to a thief while eating dinner at a downtown D.C. restaurant on Sunday night. That's last night, Easter, out at a nice restaurant for Easter dinner. Turns out the Secret Service, which failed to provide security for Kristi Noem, but they are supposed to provide security for the Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security, reviewed security camera footage at the restaurant, not named here, and saw an unnamed white male, an unknown white male. Now they've got the race in. You'd think if it was a black male, they'd say it was a black male. But they say an unknown white male, hang on, how do we know it's a Democrat, wearing a medical mask at what would have to be a very nice restaurant downtown D.C., Easter for the Secretary of the Department, Easter dinner for the Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security, wearing a medical mask. They saw the white guy with a medical mask steal her bag and leave the restaurant. Got away with Kristi Noem's driver's license, apartment keys, passport, DHS access badge, makeup bag, $3,000 in cash, blank checks, credit cards. Not good. So I just started singing out here in the fields, and I realized the microphone was hot. I was able to restrain myself. Like Joe Scarborough restrains Mika Brzezinski, I think it's remarkable. Yeah, so Joe Scarborough said, those conservatives in the Catholic Church, they were the hard right. He called them the hard right in the Catholic Church. They were outraged, he is pretending, because the Pope years ago said something that was controversial. But here goes Joe Scarborough and NBC fake news to the controversy immediately. And I've got to say, I got to go back just for a moment. The Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security, Kristi Noem, who has Secret Service protection, was enjoying Easter dinner last night at a fancy restaurant in Washington, D.C., when a Democrat wearing a surgical mask went by her table and stole her purse. And somehow the Secret Service, not having a good Easter Sunday, did not stop this from happening. That's pretty amazing and pretty appalling, I've got to say. Our federal government is not having a good decade. Man, I'm telling you. Got away with Kristi Noem's driver's license in her, that just says her bag. So I assume it was a purse, would be another term for a woman's bag, in which she has her, they say, makeup and blank checks. So that'd be a checkbook, presumably. About $3,000 in cash. That's a lot of cash to be going around. But she figures, what the hell? I got the Secret Service protecting me. So I can carry $3,000 and I'll always have cash to give to, whoever for tips and for family. Here, I've got some cash for you. But then a Democrat wearing a medical mask stole her bag and left the restaurant. And somehow the Secret Service didn't, man. The protectee is eating dinner. You don't want to lean right over them. But you don't want to leave the restaurant and go to the place next door either, I think. Isn't that amazing? Got away with Kristi Noem's bag, which had her driver's license, had medication. Apartment keys, lives in an apartment. Her passport was in the bag. Her access badge to the Department of Homeland Security. You think the secretary really needs an access badge? Does she have to swipe herself in or anything like that? Her makeup bag, blank checks, $3,000 in cash. Isn't that amazing? Secret Service has launched an investigation. That's a good idea. To trace the use of Noem's financial instruments. She has, there was a violin in there too, and it's had money in it. It's a financial instrument. And that's all that there is. That's all the detail of that story right now. But I'm telling you, our federal government not impressing much these days, I think it would be fair to say. Man, oh man, oh man. I'm telling you. And also at the White House today, we have the Easter egg roll going on, where people that have connections to the White House invited. You can sign up to if a regular person, but lots of people with connections to the White House, and they bring their kids typically, and you hunt around the South Lawn and beyond for Easter eggs. And I hear this year they're using real eggs, right? They're using real eggs, not plastic eggs or something. But while that's going on, Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of the entire Department of Defense, was there, and he had a thing or two to say to the media over their latest attack on Pete Hegseth, and there's big thing going on there. So Pete Hegseth stopped and gave the press a bit of an earful, and we'll get to that with you too, because we've got a lot to get to as always. Yeah, and the news media, who was it? Yahoo News, very upset. What egg shortage? ? Well, it's true the Democrats killed millions of chickens. White House Easter egg roll to proceed with thousands of real eggs amid soaring prices. That's why we have the oligarch, as the oligarchs in charge, as Bernie Sanders, the communist, and the idiot communist, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, flying private jets to go to fight the oligarchy rallies. No sense of irony, these people. But before we go back to that, let's go to soundbite number 5. Just amazing. Now, he said, the first soundbite I played of Joe Scarborough saying that the hard right in the Vatican, but then he lets that bleed over into his own domestic politics because he's severely deranged. And he said, so the Pope borrowed from Jesus, saying, who am I to judge, right? Who am I to judge? And he's like, yeah, because Jesus said, who am I to judge about gay priests? That's not what happened. So he's misquoting Scripture and Jesus and the Bible, which is perfectly typical. But he's doing it to attack people that he calls the hard right. Again, he used to be a Republican member of the House of Representatives from Florida. And then that young girl died in his office. It was kind of weird. There was never any satisfactory investigation into how that happened. But never mind that. Joe Scarborough, using the occasion of Easter yesterday, the death of the Pope Francis today, to launch political attacks because that's what these little fascists do.
His legacy was remarkable in that Jesus reached out to those who were shunned by religious leaders in society, the lepers, the tax collectors, the sinners like the woman at the well. And with Francis conservatives, many conservatives inside the church hated him for being Christ-like in that respect.
They hated him.
Just as the religious leaders of his day hated Jesus.
They hated him. The conservatives in the church hated him for being like Jesus because, you see, the conservatives in the church, they hate Jesus. Joe Scarborough should be gassed. He should be fired from NBC fake news anyway. Well, that should have happened a long time ago for 50 other things as well. But let me just say, this is our news media. This is NBC fake news. And just amazing. Conservatives hated him for being Christ-like. Wait a minute. So the more conservative you are as a Catholic, the more likely you are to hate Christ, Jesus Christ. He says this hours after Easter has ended, the holiest day in the Christian calendar. But that is and the reason is he gets to demonize the word conservative. That's the attack here.
Many conservatives inside the church hated him for being Christ-like.
Yeah, the conservatives, this is the demonization of the word conservative by mentally ill, dangerously corrupt, idiotic media figures paid millions, literally, of dollars every year, along with his semi-inflatable flotation device of a third wife, Mika. And these people, so wait a minute, the conservatives hated him. Why? For being Christ-like, which says not just vaguely that conservatives hate Christ on Easter Monday, on the day that the Pope died. This is what you get from NBC fake news. Pretty amazing stuff. And he started this with a quote from 2013, 12 years ago. Francis responding to a question about a purportedly gay priest. And he was allegedly quoted as saying, "Who am I to judge?" All right? Now, let's keep in mind, because our last brilliant caller also said something about this as well. And the Democrats, Michael Piercy also noting that the Pope dying at the age of 88 is going to get the Democrats going, because they say that 88, the number 88, is a gang sign for Heil Hitler, because H is the 8th letter of the alphabet. So that's what they like to do there. Pretty amazing. These people, I've got to tell you. But it's also true that the Pope was not enthusiastic about transgenderism, and that he referred to the trans ideology as evil, and that has to have liberals very concerned, doesn't it, because of their mental illness? These people. Yeah, Joe Scarborough jabs at conservatives in the church who hated, that's in quotation marks, hated Christ-like Pope. So it's the demonization. These people are the people of civil war. These people are not on the side of civilization. They're quite amazing. Joe Scarborough talking about Pope Francis, who he's trying to paint in some way that did not exist. And conservatives in the church hated, that's the word that Joe Scarborough used, the Pope, because he was Christ-like.
Many conservatives inside the church hated him for being Christ-like.
Yeah, for being Christ-like, because that's what your Democrat Party sells, and that's what your news media sells. By the way, President Trump has declared that flags will be flown at half-staff in the United States to honor the passing of Pope Francis and the life of Pope Francis. And I believe that he announced that the American flags in the United States And if you're a Democrat, your transgender flag should fly at half-staff until the Pope Francis is interred, his funeral, right? But Joe Scarborough is spreading the hate because those conservatives hate anyone who's Christ-like, according to NBC News, which is why they firebombed the Jews and chased them off of college campuses. They did firebomb the governor's mansion of the Jewish governor of Pennsylvania, and it was a hardcore Democrat who firebombed the Jewish governor's home on the night of the Seder dinner, the Passover, and it's Passover, so naturally, hey, he's a Jewish governor, and he was firebombed for being too pro-Israel and not pro-Hamas enough. Joe Scarborough continues the demented attack. His brain is not a good brain.
Now the big question is, moving forward, which direction does this church go back to? Does it go back to...
Going forward, where does it go back to?
Of doctrine and law over love and inclusivity?
Over love and inclusivity. I think Joe's looking for a date over here. And wait a minute. He's talking about how does the church go forward, and then he declares that it's going back to something. That's I like to say because it's true. They use the words, but they don't know what they mean.
Moving forward, which direction does this church go back to?
Yeah, moving forward, which direction does this church go back to? These are not smart people. These are not serious people. They shouldn't be treated as serious people because there's something terribly wrong with them. Man. But hate is about hate, and conservatives hate the Pope because he's Christ-like. And going forward, what do they go back to? And the hard right in the church. This is a mental illness. This party is really a mental illness. Just amazing stuff. So the 147th White House Easter egg roll is happening today, day after Easter, at the White House, hosted by President Trump. He'll be out shortly to talk. We will share his comments with you when he speaks. About 30,000 real eggs, 2,500 cartons of 12 donated by the America's Egg Farmers will be used to, for decorating and games on the South Lawn. And the kids are going to get a lot of eggs. And the news media is complaining about this because, eggs. God, they're just mental. These people. What is wrong with them? The Democrat Party. Yesterday, Easter was celebrated by many. The Democrat families across America celebrated MS-13. They love murder. Just crazy. Hey, are you a yo-yo dieter? You lose weight, but then you gain it all back again, plus a few pounds. Breaking free of your yo-yo diet pattern, one of the main reasons that doctors created Lean. Lean, brought to you by Brick House Nutrition. It's a supplement. It's not an injection, and you don't need a prescription from a doctor either. Lean targets weight loss in 3 powerful ways. It helps you to maintain healthy blood sugar levels, helps you to control your appetite and your cravings, and it helps you to burn fat by converting fat into energy. Listen, you're tired of losing weight and gaining it back again. Well, Lean was created for you. And let me help get you started with 20% off when you enter the code PLANT20, PLANT20 at TakeLean.com. That's the code PLANT20 at TakeLean.com. These statements and products have not been evaluated by the FDA. The product is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, prevent any disease, and is not a substitute or alternative for care from a healthcare provider. Yeah, I'm telling you. Yeah, so flags at half-staff, and the Democrats, the transgender flag's going to half-staff. And Joe Scarborough is spreading the hate of Christ. Is that what it is? It's Democrats, they celebrate Easter differently.
Many conservatives inside the church hated him for being Christ-like.
bum, 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 bum. Now the media is attacking President Trump because it's a day of the week. Well, you hear about this idiot from Politico attacking Trump. Oh, he didn't even call Josh Shapiro when a Democrat firebombed his Jewish governor's mansion. Really? Did Joe Biden call Shapiro? Did Kamala Harris call Shapiro? Did Tim Walz call Shapiro? The firebomber called Shapiro. He was a Democrat. All right, let's take a phone call, Michael. Let's go to Rose, calling from Springfield, Virginia. Rose, by any other name, you're on the Chris Plant Show.
Hi, Chris. Thanks for taking my call.
Hi.
I just wanted to let you know that Scarborough is misusing the terms that apply to the church. For example, he uses conservative and liberal. Well, the church is not a government. It's not a democracy. It's a theocracy. And therefore, the terms are either you're Orthodox, you follow the teachings of the church, or you're a heretic or a cafeteria Catholic. So when people were upset they were Orthodox Catholics about what the Pope said because it was very misleading. When he says, who am I to judge, they think it can be misconstrued into saying, well, that's okay. You can do whatever you want. Christ died for you, so, go ahead and do whatever. But they forget about the part of, Jesus throwing the money lenders out of the temple, losing their temper there, or telling the woman at the well, go and sin no more. So that's where the upset is. That's where it was misleading, and that's why they were upset.
That is excellent. I'm so glad you called in because I'm not as good at this as you are. That's great.
I'm not that good, believe me.
Well, that's all part of being a Christian is, feeling that you're not as good at it as you should be, and I think that's perfectly normal. But I'm really glad that you called in with that because it is wonderful. And the hypocrites at NBC Fake News are just beyond belief. And they can polarize anything, can't they?
Yes, they can.
The Pope dies, they politicize it and attack their political adversaries.
Oh, sure.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Yeah, you got their number. Rose, thank you for the wonderful call. I appreciate your weighing in on that. And honestly, these people, I got another NBC News story coming up for you, too, about the Jewish governor of Pennsylvania who was firebombed by a Democrat recently.